Have you ever wondered why your blood pressure keeps rising even when you're doing everything your doctor told you to do? You take your medication, you try to eat better, you go for your daily walk, and yet somehow the numbers keep creeping higher. Curious. What if the real problem isn't just your blood pressure, but something happening deep inside your arteries that most people never hear about? Today I'm going to show you something that may completely change how you think about heart health. Excited. It's a simple 10-minute method that many seniors are now using at home, and some are seeing their blood pressure improve in ways medication alone never achieved. But before I show you the method, you need to understand why arteries become stiff in the first place, the 3 warning signs most people ignore, and how a small daily habit could help restore healthy blood flow to your brain and heart. Because once you understand what's really happening inside your arteries, you'll never look at blood pressure the same way again. I'm about to show you something that takes 10 minutes, something you can do at home today that your arteries have been waiting for, something that seniors all over the country are doing every morning and seeing their blood pressure drop in ways that years of medication never achieved. And there's a very high chance nobody has ever told you about this. Not your doctor, not your cardiologist, because it doesn't come in a pill. What I'm about to share will change how you think about arterial stiffness forever. It goes against everything the system has told you. You've been told stiff arteries are just part of getting older. You've been told there's nothing you can do except take more medication. You've been told to accept it. That is wrong. And the research proving it is wrong has been sitting in medical journals for years. By the end of this video, you'll know the 3 signs that your arteries are already stiffening that most people are completely ignoring. You'll understand exactly what is causing it. And most importantly, you'll know the 10-minute method that is proven to improve arterial flexibility, reduce blood pressure, and restore blood flow to your brain in ways that feel different within days of starting. I'm not going to tell you what the method is just yet, because if I tell you now, you'll write it down and leave, and you'll miss why it works. And if you don't understand why it works, you won't do it consistently. And if you don't do it consistently, nothing changes. Stay with me, because what you learn in this video could be the difference between your blood pressure finally responding to treatment and spending the next 10 years chasing a number that keeps running away from you. Let me tell you about Margaret, and I need you to listen carefully because I promise you, you are going to recognize her story. Margaret was 72 years old, a retired school principal from Virginia. She had run a school of 400 children for 22 years and never once lost control of a situation. Sharp, organized, decisive, the kind of woman who never missed an appointment, never let anything slip through the cracks, never complained when things were hard. She had managed difficult parents and difficult teachers and a difficult school board, and she had done it all with grace and precision and a spine of pure steel. She took her 3 blood pressure medications at the exact same time every morning. She tracked her readings in a blue notebook with her name written on the front. She ate well. She walked 30 minutes every day. She did everything her doctor asked without complaint. And every year, her blood pressure climbed a little more anyway. It had started at 66 with 1 pill. Her doctor had said it was just a precaution. Blood pressure was 138/86. Nothing alarming, just slightly above the target. Margaret had taken the pill without drama and gone home and made dinner, and thought nothing more about it. But the blood pressure did not come down the way her doctor wanted. 138 became 141, then 145. Her doctor added a second medication. Margaret took both pills faithfully every morning before her coffee. Blood pressure dropped briefly to 136, then crept back up, 140, 143, 147. Her doctor added a third. By the time Margaret was 71, she was on 3 medications, and her morning readings were still averaging 148/88. Her doctor told her the same thing at every visit. Your arteries are getting stiffer as you age. It is a normal part of getting older. We will adjust the medications. Margaret nodded and went home and took her pills and walked her walk and waited for something to change. Nothing changed. She noticed other things during those years that she did not connect to her arteries. She was dizzy in the mornings. Every single morning when she stood up from the kitchen table after breakfast, there were 2 or 3 seconds where she had to stand very still and hold on to the chair back before the room steadied. She'd been doing this for so long, she had stopped thinking of it as something wrong. It was just what mornings were now. She mentioned it to her doctor once. He checked her seated blood pressure, said it looked fine, said it might be the medications, said they would keep an eye on it. She kept her hand on the chair every morning. She moved through her kitchen more slowly than she used to. She was also tired in a way that did not respond to sleep. She went to bed at 10:00 and woke at 6 centimes and felt like she had not rested. She needed a nap most afternoons, which she took in her armchair with the television on at low volume. She had always been a person of enormous energy. She had run a school on 4 hours of sleep during the busy seasons and felt fine. Now 8 hours left her feeling hollow. She told herself it was just age, that this was what 60-some felt like, and she needed to accept it. Her doctor checked her thyroid normal, checked her iron normal, checked her for sleep apnea. She had mild sleep apnea, got a CPAP machine, used it every night. The tiredness improved slightly. The dizziness in the mornings did not. Her pressure in the mornings was now 148, then 152. Her doctor added a 4th medication. She stood in the pharmacy looking at the new prescription and thought about her mother for the first time in months. Her mother had died of a stroke at 76. Her mother had also been on multiple blood pressure medications. Her mother had also been told her arteries were just getting older. Her mother had also done everything right. Her mother had also stood in a pharmacy holding a new prescription. Margaret remembered it clearly and looked at it with that same particular expression. Not quite fear, something more tired than fear. Margaret filled the prescription and went home and added the 4th pill to the others in the weekly dispenser she kept next to the coffee maker. Margaret was 73 when she had her fall. She stood up from her kitchen chair after breakfast on a Tuesday morning, and the room tilted. Not violently, just enough. Her legs didn't catch her the way they should have. She had just a fraction of a second where she understood what was happening and could do nothing about it. She reached for the counter and missed by 3 in. She hit the floor hard on her left side and felt something break before she even fully registered the impact. Her wrist, her hip, both on the same side. She was on the floor of her kitchen for 40 minutes before her neighbor, who came to drop off a casserole she had promised earlier in the week, found her through the screen door. Margaret told me later that the 40 minutes on the floor were the most frightening experience of her life. Not because of the pain, though the pain was severe and she was very aware of it throughout, but because she lay there on the kitchen linoleum, looking up at the ceiling she had looked at 10,000 mornings from a standing position. And she thought about her mother, about how this was how it started for her mother too. The fall, then the hospital, then the rehabilitation center, then the smaller apartment because the house was too much, then the decline that never fully reversed, the slow narrowing of a life. She was terrified she was watching her own future begin from the floor of her kitchen with a broken hip and nobody home. Her daughter flew in from Atlanta that afternoon. She sat in the hospital room and held her mother's hand and did not say much. Margaret saw the fear her daughter was working hard to keep off her face. Her daughter was 44 years old and had her own children and her own life, and had just dropped everything and gotten on a plane because her mother was on a hospital floor. Margaret felt the weight of that alongside everything else. She spent 6 weeks in rehabilitation, 6 weeks away from her home and her garden and her grandchildren, 6 weeks of physical therapy and occupational therapy, and the particular indignity of needing help to do things she had been doing alone since she was 18 years old. She was a woman who had run 400 people. She was now being helped to walk down a hallway. She understood this was necessary. She did not make it dramatic. But alone at night in the rehabilitation center, she let herself feel it. The fall was not caused by bad luck. It was caused by her medications doing exactly what they were designed to do. They had brought her blood pressure down to a number that looked safe on paper. But that same number in a woman with stiffened arteries who stood up from a chair after a meal caused a 30-point drop in the pressure reaching her brain in the seconds after she stood. The stiff arteries could not redirect blood upward fast enough. Her brain went momentarily dark. Her legs went with it. Nobody had told Margaret this could happen. Nobody had told her that arterial stiffness and the medications used to treat it can create a situation where blood pressure is simultaneously too high at rest and dangerously low during the transitions of normal daily life. And nobody had told her there was something she could do about the underlying stiffness itself, something that did not come in a bottle, something her arteries could respond to directly. Nobody told her about the 10-minute method. I want to tell you about one more person before I explain what it is, because this second story is the one I see most often, and it might be even more familiar to you than Margaret's. Dorothy was 68, a grandmother from Tennessee, warm, funny, the kind of person who remembered everyone's birthday and showed up with food whenever anyone in her life had a hard week. She had been managing borderline high blood pressure for 4 years without medication, because her numbers were never quite high enough for her doctor to insist 134/82, sometimes 136. Her doctor said they were watching and waiting and she should reduce her sodium and walk more and come back in 3 months. Dorothy reduced her sodium. Dorothy walked. Dorothy came back every 3 months and sat in the exam room and let the cuff squeeze her arm and hoped the number had moved. It had not moved. What was bothering Dorothy more than the number was something she never brought up at those appointments, because she did not know it was connected. She was tired. Not the tiredness that comes from a bad night's sleep or a busy week. Something different. A tiredness that lived in her bones and didn't respond to rest. She would sleep 8 full hours and wake up feeling like she had barely closed her eyes. She would pour her first cup of coffee and stand at the kitchen counter in the early morning light, wondering why she felt like she was already running behind on energy before the day had even started. She would get through the morning on willpower and then hit a wall around 2 hours in the afternoon that felt like a door slamming. She would sit in her armchair while her grandchildren played on the floor and feel her eyes getting heavy in a way she could not fight off. She had never been a napper. She was a woman who had raised 3 children and worked part-time and kept an immaculate house and stayed up past midnight when she needed to. Now she was falling asleep in the afternoon in front of her grandchildren and feeling embarrassed about it in a way she couldn't quite explain, because what was there to be embarrassed about? Plenty of people napped, except she never had, and it felt like something had changed, like something had been taken. The fog was worse than the tiredness. She didn't call it fog. She called it just not being as quick as she used to be. Words that had always come immediately were taking a fraction of a second longer to arrive. She would be in the middle of a story at the dinner table and reach for a name she had known for 30 years and find it just slightly out of reach. There for a moment and then not. She would get there. It would come. But that pause, that brief reaching, had not been there before. She noticed every single time it happened. She had started to dread it. She was also having trouble with directions, not getting lost, but in familiar places. The grocery store she had been shopping at for 12 years, the church she had attended for 20. She would sometimes have a moment of uncertainty, a half second where she was not quite sure which way to turn. She always recovered immediately. But the uncertainty itself, that tiny, unfamiliar hesitation in places that had never required any thought at all, stayed with her long after it passed. Dorothy went online and looked up early dementia symptoms. She read for 2 hours and then closed the laptop and sat at her kitchen table in the quiet, and was frightened in a way she had not been frightened in a long time. Her father had had dementia. The last 3 years of his life, he had been somewhere else, somewhere she could see but not reach, and she had visited him every Sunday and watched him look at her with polite, confused eyes, and tried not to show him how it broke her. She called her daughter that evening. She did not tell her what she had read. She just wanted to hear her voice. She made an appointment with a neurologist. The neurologist tested her for 45 minutes and found nothing alarming. Her cognition was intact. Her memory was intact. Some slowing was normal at 68. Dorothy drove home from that appointment feeling simultaneously relieved and not relieved at all because the appointment had given her a clean bill of neurological health. But the fog was still there. The tiredness was still there. The words still occasionally arrived a beat late. The clean bill hadn't explained any of it. It had just confirmed that whatever was happening wasn't the worst thing she had feared. But something was still happening. What was happening was that her arteries, not yet stiff enough to produce dramatically high blood pressure numbers, were stiff enough to be delivering blood to her brain in uneven, irregular pulses instead of the smooth, steady flow her brain depended on. Her brain, which demands more blood per gram than almost any other tissue in her body, was getting slightly less than it needed. Not enough to cause a stroke, not enough to show up on a neurological test. Just enough to make everything feel slightly harder, slightly slower, slightly more effortful than it had always been before. Her doctor had never connected her borderline blood pressure to her fatigue, had never connected the fatigue to her fog, had never connected any of it to arterial stiffness that was real and measurable, but not yet dramatic enough to demand immediate attention. She was in the gap, the place between fine and clearly unwell, where most people spend years without anyone connecting the dots. When Dorothy started the 10-minute method and the supporting protocol, the first thing she noticed before her blood pressure moved at all was that the two-Weller wall disappeared. She'd been hitting it every single afternoon for 3 years. 2 weeks into the protocol, it was simply gone. She sat in her armchair at 2-wire and felt awake. She got up and did something instead of dozing. She called me to report her blood pressure numbers had dropped 8 points and mentioned the disappearing wall almost as a side note, almost as if she felt she shouldn't say it because it sounded too good. I told her it did not sound too good. I told her I heard it every time someone addressed their arterial stiffness directly. The brain feels it before the numbers show it. She was quiet for a moment and then said she hadn't realized how much she had missed feeling like herself until she started feeling like herself again. Before I tell you what the method is, I need to make sure you can recognize the 3 signs of arterial stiffness in your own body. Because many of you watching this video right now are living with these signs every single day, and you have either been told they are normal or you have never connected them to your arteries at all. The first sign is a blood pressure top number that keeps rising even though nothing in your life has changed. You were stable for a year or 2 at 1 reading. Then without changing your diet, your medications, your exercise, anything, the number crept up 5 points. Then another 5. Your doctor adjusted your medication and it came back down briefly. Then 6 months later, it crept up again. You've been chasing this number for years and it keeps moving away from you. This is the pattern of progressive arterial stiffness. The medication brings the number down. The stiffness keeps pushing it back up and the cycle continues because the stiffness itself is never directly addressed. Margaret had this pattern for 6 years before her fall. Her doctor responded each time by adjusting the medication, and he was right to do so. But he had one tool and the problem required more than one tool. If this is your pattern, write it in the comments. Type rising because you are not alone and you deserve to know why this keeps happening. The second sign is dizziness when you stand up just a moment, a second or 2 where you reach for the nearest surface before your legs feel fully steady under you. You've been doing it long enough that you no longer register it as something wrong. You have told yourself it is the blood pressure medication. You have told yourself it is just how mornings are now. You have told yourself everyone your age does this. They do not. Now, I need to tell you about something millions of seniors are taking right now that is making this worse. And almost nobody has connected the dots. Calcium supplements, specifically calcium carbonate, the form in most drugstore calcium pills, and in antacids like Tums. Here is the paradox that nobody explained to you. Seniors are told to take calcium for their bones to prevent osteoporosis to reduce fracture risk. This makes sense on the surface. Bones are made of calcium. More calcium should mean stronger bones. But calcium that is swallowed in a pill does not automatically know where to go. It enters your bloodstream. And without the proper signals directing it into bone, it precipitates wherever it finds a convenient surface. Artery walls are a convenient surface, especially artery walls that are already inflamed or damaged from years of high blood pressure. The calcium deposits into the artery wall. The soft, smooth muscle tissue begins to turn into bone. This is not a metaphor. This is literal calcification. Your artery walls are oifying, becoming bone. This is called the bone-to-stone paradox. You take calcium to strengthen your bones. Without vitamin K2 and magnesium to direct that calcium properly, your bones stay weak and your arteries turn to stone. Both problems worsen simultaneously. A massive meta-analysis published in the British Medical Journal in 2010 looked at tens of thousands of people taking calcium supplements. The people taking calcium without K2 had a 27% increased risk of heart attack compared to people not taking calcium. 27%. That is not a small side effect. That is a major red flag that should be printed on every calcium bottle sold in this country. It is not. Let me be more specific about the calcium supplement issue, because it is affecting millions of people right now, and the advice they received was incomplete. Not wrong, but incomplete. They do not. When your doctor tells you that you have osteopenia or early osteoporosis, the standard recommendation is calcium and vitamin D. You go to the pharmacy. You buy a bottle of calcium carbonate. The label says 600 ml per tablet. Take one twice daily. It mentions vitamin D to help absorption. It does not mention vitamin K2. It does not mention magnesium. Those are not on the label. You take the calcium faithfully for 3 years. You get another bone density scan. Your bones have improved slightly. You also get a coronary calcium score for the first time as part of a heart screening. It is elevated. Your doctor mentions it but does not explain where the calcium came from. You assume it is from aging from your diet. But dietary calcium from food does not cause arterial calcification at anywhere near the rate supplemental calcium without coactors does. When your doctor tells you that you have osteopenia or early osteoporosis, the standard recommendation is calcium and vitamin D. You go to the pharmacy. You buy a bottle of calcium carbonate. The label says 600 ml per tablet. Take one twice daily. It mentions vitamin D to help absorption. It does not mention vitamin K2. It does not mention magnesium. Those are not on the label. You take the calcium faithfully for 3 years. You get another bone density scan. Your bones have improved slightly. You also get a coronary calcium score for the first time as part of a heart screening. It is elevated. Your doctor mentions it but does not explain where the calcium came from. You assume it is from aging from your diet. But dietary calcium from food does not cause arterial calcification at anywhere near the rate supplemental calcium without coactors does. The calcium you have been taking for your bones has been circulating in your bloodstream, looking for somewhere to deposit. Without K2 activating matrix GLA protein to direct it into bone, the calcium precipitates wherever it finds a surface. Inflamed artery walls are a convenient surface. Damaged artery walls from years of high blood pressure are an especially convenient surface. Adding K2 and magnesium to your calcium regimen is not optional. It is what the research shows is necessary to prevent the bone-to-stone paradox. The fact that this information has not made it onto calcium supplement labels in a clear, prominent way is a failure of consumer protection. But it does not change the biology. If you are taking calcium, add K2 and magnesium today. If you are taking calcium for your bones right now, and you are not also taking vitamin K2 and magnesium with it, you may be accelerating the exact arterial calcification that is widening your pulse pressure and putting you at risk. Let me tell you what vitamin K2 does, because this is where the reversal begins. Vitamin K2 activates a protein in your body called matrix glin. Think of matrix glialoprotein as a scraper and a traffic cop combined. It scrapes calcium deposits off the walls of your arteries and directs that calcium into your bones where it belongs. Without K2, the traffic cop is off duty. Calcium goes wherever it wants. With K2, the traffic cop is working. Calcium is actively pulled out of your artery walls and deposited into your skeleton. If this video helped you understand something about your heart that nobody has ever explained before, take a moment to support the channel. Tap the like button, because that helps this information reach more people who may be silently struggling with rising blood pressure and stiff arteries. And share this video with someone you care about, a parent, a spouse, a friend over 60, because this simple knowledge could make a real difference in their health. Also, tell me in the comments, which sign did you recognize the most? Rising blood pressure numbers, dizziness when standing, cold feet or circulation problems. Your experience may help someone else realize they're not alone. And if you want the full step-by-step breakdown of the 10-minute flush routine, including demonstrations, safety tips, and the research behind it, you'll find the guide linked in the description below. Remember, your arteries are living tissue. They respond to how you move, what you eat, and the habits you practice every single day. Small changes done consistently can create powerful results over time. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.